Typhoon Ondoy hits Manila really hard in 2009 and causes the worst flooding in Philippine history up until the point of this storm. It was an absolute deluge. An 18-year-old boy risks his life so many times to help save others and becomes a real-life superhero, and in my mind, an absolute legend. And this is a pretty emotional story, so let's see if I can get through it without getting too emotional myself. But first, if you enjoy stories about heroes and what they did in real life to make them heroes, go ahead and hit all the buttons, make sure you're subscribed and you've got on your notifications so you don't miss any future uploads. Now, for today's hero. Muelmar Magallanes was a pretty well-known guy in his local community. Muelmar lived in Quezon City, which is part of Metro Manila in the Philippines. Muelmar was affectionately called Toto by his friends and his family, which is an endearing nickname which is common in the Philippines. In 2009, he worked as a construction worker in Quezon City where he lived, and even though he was only 18 years old, Toto was known by everyone around him as someone who was very hardworking and very dependable. He had a physically demanding job being in construction, and he was very good at it. He was very kind-hearted, and he would help anyone who needed it, whether they were friends or family, or even if they were just complete strangers. If someone needed help, Toto was right there helping. And Toto loved his family a great deal. He was working to help support them, and he did whatever he needed to do to help keep his family safe. And in September of 2009, everyone would know what kind of a person Toto really was. Typhoon Ondoy, or Ondoy as the Filipinos would say it, was known internationally as Typhoon Ketsana, and it was first detected as a tropical depression on September 23, 2009, east of the Philippines. On the very next day after it was detected, so on the 24th, it was upgraded to a tropical storm. And as this storm kept moving west towards the Philippines, it kept gaining strength, getting stronger and stronger. Typhoons in the Philippines are actually quite common, so as a rule, Filipinos know what to do to prepare for one of these storms. They secure their roofs, their windows, and their doors to be able to withstand strong winds. They clear their gutters and their drainage systems to help the water flow away from their homes instead of flooding them. They stock up on bottled water and non-perishable food items because some of these storms can be quite severe and they can affect the supply of food and clean water. They also stock up on batteries for their flashlights, and they top off their first aid kits as well. But none of this preparation could have gotten them ready for what this storm was about to give them. But of course, having gone through many typhoons before, why would this one be any different? So on the morning of September 26, 2009, Toto and his family, they woke up in the morning and they started getting some breakfast. And they were pretty much just hanging out in the house and just waiting for time to go by for this storm to pass, the same way that they've done many times before with other storms that they've experienced. So here they are in their house, they can hear the storm raging outside, the sounds of the strong wind, the downpouring rain, and then at some point, suddenly, they notice that the floor is wet. And as they're sitting there kind of in awe over this, they see that the water on the floor is starting to get a little deeper and a little deeper. So at this point, they react as fast as they can. Toto lived with his family near the Toliacan River, and thanks to this onslaught of rain from this typhoon that just hit the area, the water level of this river rose really fast and was now overflowing and flooding the city. Now, as I tell you what happens, I just want you to keep in mind how much rain was coming down. So this storm produced an entire month's of rain in the Philippines, a month's worth of rain in just 6 hours. So just keep that in your head. So when Toto and his family noticed the water levels rising in their house, they knew they had to get to higher ground in order to be safe. So Toto, along with his older brother Jofran and their father Samuel, they decide that they have to evacuate their family from the house. So it's still in the morning time of September 26th, and Toto, with his parents and his siblings, they open the door of their house and they leave their house out into the typhoon in order to get to higher ground. And they're instantly met with torrential rain and floodwaters rising quickly. So Toto, with his older brother and their father, they tie ropes around the mother named Maria Luz, and they also tie ropes around Toto's younger siblings. And they do this in order for them not to get swept away from the current of this strong flash flood that they now have to trek through in order to get to safety. As Toto is now walking with his family, the water levels continue to rise. And so as they were walking, fighting against the rain and the wind and the water current, they could see and hear people all around them screaming for help. People that were stuck where they were, people that were frozen by fear, from young children all the way up to elderly people. And many of these people didn't even know how to swim. So once Toto and his family finally made it to higher ground, finding a spot where they would be safe from the rising flood, Toto, without any hesitation at all, told his family that he was going to go back to help others get to safety. Toto, he was not only physically strong, but he was also a very strong swimmer. So seeing and hearing other people screaming for help, he wasn't about to just stand back and do nothing. And so he turns away from his family knowing that they were going to be safe there, and he re-entered the floodwaters looking for anyone who needed help. He came across a young boy who was clinging onto this styrofoam box floating there in the flood. So he made it out to the boy, he grabs him, then he turns and he takes the boy to the same place that he just took his family. And as soon as this boy was safe, Toto, he turns again back to the floodwaters, he goes back in to go help more people. And this whole time, the rain keeps getting stronger and stronger, and the water level keeps rising. The current in the water keeps getting stronger and more dangerous. And as Toto is in the water again, he hears several kids off in the distance calling for help that were trapped on their rooftop. Toto, who was very determined, he makes his way over to the rooftop where these kids were stuck, and he sees that there's multiple kids there. So he takes the first kid into his arms and he heads for that safe area again. The same place where he left his family and now this other boy who was clinging to the styrofoam box. So this kid is now safe. So then Toto, he heads back to that same rooftop to get another kid, and he keeps going back and forth rescuing these kids one at a time until all of them are brought to that safe area. And every time Toto brought somebody to his parents in that safe area where they were, his parents were, of course, extremely proud of their son, but they were also very worried. Because every time they watched their son turn and go back out into the floodwaters to help more people, they knew he was strong, but they also knew that he was getting tired. But Toto, he just kept going after more and more people. He found some elderly people that were trapped inside their home, so he made it through the floodwaters, swimming wherever he needed to, and he was able to get these elderly people out of the house and save them one by one as well. And every time Toto was in these waters rescuing someone, he would hear more people screaming out for help. So that's why every time he brought another person to safety, he headed out again because he could hear more people that needed help. He just refused to stay where it was safe when he knew that there were more people out there that needed help, and he knew that he could do it. And again, every time he goes back out, the rain is stronger, the current is stronger, the water's deeper. In some areas, the water was already 10 feet deep. In other areas, the water was 20 feet deep. One girl named Nila Milan was at home with her mother when the floods came, and the waters came up so fast that there was no time at all to evacuate. The floods submerged their house in water in a matter of just minutes, and Nila was thinking, we're about to die here. When suddenly, Toto appears out of nowhere. He pulls Nila and her mother from the flood in their house and saves them from drowning, and he's able to get both of them over to the safe area. And Toto's father, Samuel, he can clearly see that Toto is just exhausted. He sees how deep the floodwater is now, and he's extremely worried about his son. And he even shouts to Toto to save himself because he's already rescued so many people. But his son, he just keeps going out into the flood to save more people. So once again, here's Toto in the raging storm in the flood, and he hears a young woman screaming. And so he makes his way as fast as he can towards the sound of this screaming woman. This young woman was Menchi Panalosa. Menchi was at home with her infant baby girl who was only about 6 months old. And as the floodwaters rapidly rose and made it to her house, she did the only thing she could do. She took her little baby girl and she climbed up on the roof of the house. Then it all happened so fast. As soon as they got to the roof, the current was so strong that the house collapsed. The rushing floodwaters swept Menchi and her baby away. And so Menchi started screaming, and these were the screams that Toto heard and started moving towards. And once again, as if out of nowhere, after the house collapsing and the water sweeping her and her baby away, Menchi felt a hand pull her and her baby up to keep them from sinking. Again, this was Toto. And exhausted as he was able to get Menchi and her baby over to where the other people were. And once Menchi and her baby were safe, Toto, again, turns around and goes back into the flood to save more people. Toto's parents, they help give Menchi and her baby emotional support, just as they've done for the rest of the people that Toto kept bringing. And after some time went by, Toto's parents, they were still waiting for Toto to come back and bring more people. Then a little more time goes by and Toto still hasn't returned. We don't know exactly how much time went by when Toto's parents were waiting for him to return, but it was enough time for his parents to start to become deeply worried. And not knowing if their son was okay or not, they really didn't want to leave, but the conditions were getting so bad that they had to make the decision to leave, along with all of the other people that were brought there by Toto. By the time they left this higher ground area, the flood had gotten so deep that they couldn't even see any more houses in the neighborhood. All the houses were now completely underwater. So everyone who was on this higher ground area, they all had to leave in order to be safe. And so they leave the area and they go to the barangay evacuation center. And this is where they took refuge while they were waiting for Toto to return. Well, this horrific stormy day turns into night, but Toto's parents, they couldn't sleep, not even a wink, all night long. Toto's mother, she kept looking out into the stormy night, waiting for Toto to show up. But all night long, he never came back. At 10 o'clock in the morning, the day after the storm, after being up all night long and not sleeping, Toto's parents, they received news that Toto had been found. His mother then starts wondering, was he found alive or was he dead? Then something struck her, something that she says that she couldn't explain, but she felt like Toto was already dead, and she felt like the heavens had crashed down on her. And unfortunately, Toto's mother, she was correct. Toto had been found, but he was already dead. What happened was, just after Toto saved Menchi and her 6-month-old baby girl from the flood, he went back out, as he did many times before, to rescue more people, but he never made it to anyone else. He was on his way to save others, and he went near this solid concrete wall. Well, the water current in this flood was so strong that it pushed this solid concrete wall right over. And it happened just at the time when Toto was going by this wall, and the wall fell and landed on Toto, killing him. And there were witnesses who saw this happen. And so early the next morning after this storm, when the floodwaters started to recede, there were rescue teams that were out and about and looking for people. And one of these rescue teams, they found Toto's lifeless body on a pile of debris that was left there by the flood. He had lots of bruising on his face and on his body where the wall hit him when it fell. And one of Toto's neighbors was there, and he identified the body and said, "Yes, that's him." So the rescue team, they wrapped Toto's body in a white sheet and started to bring his body to his family that was waiting for them in the evacuation center. And so this was when the news reached the family that Toto had been found. And Toto's family members, everyone except for his mom, they were ignoring these rumors that Toto was dead, and they were still keeping hope that they were going to bring him back alive. But it became apparent very quickly when they saw the rescue team carrying something that was in a white sheet, which was Toto's body. As you can imagine, Toto's mother, she felt like she just wanted to die. And she said, "He's my son. He's always thoughtful and very helpful. Why did he have to die? I should have died, not him." And so Maria Luz, Toto's mother, is just standing there weeping over the loss of her son, when suddenly an anonymous woman comes over and gives her a hug and starts weeping with her. This was one of the women that Toto had saved the day before in the flood. Then more people came over and they started sharing hugs and tears, and then even more people came. They started showing up and doing the same thing, giving hugs. People of all ages, from young to old. These were all people that Toto had saved in the storm the day before. Toto saved more than 30 people in this typhoon during the worst flood in Philippine history. And if that concrete wall hadn't fallen on him, he surely would have saved even more. Muelmar Magallanes will never be forgotten. He will always be remembered as the legend that he is. Thank you so much for watching. I knew I wasn't going to be able to tell this one without getting a little emotional myself. If you're still here, especially at the end of the video, I hope you've hit the subscribe button by now. It's free. Thank you so much again. I'll see you on the next one.